Hello, recruits. Let's weed out all non-hackers and aim these two gargantuan pieces of artillery I call my biceps at some canister Damascus made with nails. Speaking of non-hackers, per usual, my first attempt here goes utterly sideways. Let's take a quick look. So to form the cutting edge, I want to forge weld on this piece of 1070 steel here. I've done this before. It usually works. Early in the forge welding, things look pretty good. But ultimately, there's going to be a delamination at the tip. You can see sort of that stripe there, what's coming apart. And then there's this horrific crack in the back here. I'm guessing that was the head of a nail that didn't forge weld to the material behind it. I don't know. We're going to have to take a different approach, so let's check that out. First, STANCO sent me these welding gloves after seeing the decrepit state of my current pair. In fact, they sent me a whole box of goodies, no strings attached. I figure I'll test this stuff out and tell you guys what I honestly think in a few months. Here's some sweet furnace gloves. These should be great for manipulating the fire brick around my forge, which gets really hot during forge welding. I'm actually excited about these. As in, dance party excited. Yep, that's a welding shirt they embroidered for me. Pretty sweet. STANCO's probably prepared for an honest review, but could not have anticipated me doing jazz hands in the robot in the gloves, tanking their sales for good. This is 16th inch thick, 1 1/4 square tubing. I'm going to close up one end on the forge. That'll be welded along that little creased seam there. For those who have seen these videos in the past, I've been using 1084 powdered steel. And I bought some 1095 powdered steel described as fine to see if it might work better. Sure enough, the 1095 is quite a bit finer than the 1084 I've been using. You'll see it here. Hopefully it'll forge weld with fewer gaps and divots in the setting of this handmade canister Damascus that I do. 1095 is a bit harder to heat treat than 1070 or 1084, but the finer powder will probably be a real benefit. First, we fill the bottom creased area of the canister with powder only. This is filler that'll be cut away before forging the knife. To keep the nails out of my cutting edge, I'm going to put this nickel sheet in there to be used as sort of a fence and keep the nails from going in that area. It'll also give a cool effect in the final knife because nickel etches very bright. Notice these are bright or unfinished nails. They're not galvanized, they don't have any coating or anything. That's very important. You wouldn't really want to put that stuff in a forge. To shake the powder into nooks and crannies, an electric jigsaw is being used. We're going to cut out a 1/8 inch thick piece of steel and use it for the cap on the end. It's going to be welded inside the canister. The plan is going to be to leave this one a little bit thick at the spine, the theory being that I'll have to grind down through more steel from spine to edge, revealing more layers and nails in the metal. Let's grind off that mild steel and see what we have underneath. As you can see, I've etched it, and we have that nickel sort of sequestering where the blade's going to be. You can see it traveling down the edge here. I'm sort of drawing out this tip area and making sure that I keep track of which side my pure 1095 powder steel was. Putting a little bit of a taper in it. Then we'll curve it over the horn of the anvil and start hammering in our bevels. It looks like we're going to end up with maybe a 5-inch blade or so, but ultimately what happens is some of that nickel we used gets smushed up and actually crosses the midline towards the tip. So I have to grind away a little bit of this tip here. And the knife ends up, I don't know, about half an inch shorter than I was aiming for. Alright, it's onto the handle. I'm going to do a little bit of grinding before heat treat, but not a lot. I really don't want to deal with any warping or cracks or stressors or anything like that. So after I do a minimal amount of grinding and set the edge, we're going to cycle it at 1550, 1500, then 1450 degrees in this heat treat oven. going to go ahead and heat treat in the forge. I've set up this angle iron in the forge to keep the flames from directly heating the knife itself. That way the tip won't get overly hot. Doing a pretty good job of scaling that 65 HRC file. It was tempered at 400 degrees twice for about an hour and a half, and then I'm starting on the grinding. Good people, hear my scheme for the most epic nail knife ever. I've made this mold, and I'm going to take this sandpaper and try to make micarta handles. So the thinking here is that the red grit on the sandpaper will dominate the final pattern, and we'll have some red, maybe a little bit of brown mixed in there. And then you have a nail knife with sandpaper handles. Pretty sweet. We all saw this coming. The micarta is the color of the sandpaper and not the grit. Just sort of this pukey gray-brown grossness. That tang was very, very thick, so I had to drill a lot of holes in it to get the weight down in the handle. It's my favorite part, watching nickel come out of an etch. It's just so bright. The handle is ash burl. It's very pretty. I have to be very careful here. I've etched the entire knife and I want to maintain the etched pattern on the handle. So I'm going to grind right up to it and then sand it down the rest of the way while it's off the knife. And we'll preserve the etching on the tang of the knife that way. Which, by the way, isn't that prominent. I don't know what happened. I'll show you here in a little bit, but even though I etched the handle just as long as the blade, parts of the handle tang really didn't get all that dark. It's sort of interesting. I don't know why it etched so prominently there along the blade and not in the handle area of the tang. It was in the etch in exactly the same amount of time. It's also cool sort of around that nickel, just behind that nickel line there. Things get sort of hazy and then they get slowly more defined as you move towards the spine. The nails etched a lot darker than I thought they would. They must have soaked up some of the carbon from the 1095. Some of those alloys must have helped the carbon migrate into the nails, I guess. I don't know. If you guys know what's going on there, let me know. Well, everyone survived boot camp. This knife is going to the Essential Craftsman. There's a link to his channel in the description below. We've got some collaboration stuff coming up, and I'm really excited about that. So this knife's going to be for him. You guys have a good one. I'll see you next time.